Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Andy, and today it is another episode of the Take Care Men, a mental health podcast, episode 4. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Professor Todd, and today we've got another guest, a special guest, Drew Williams.
Hey,
Some
how
of
you
you
doing?
might know as the Whisker Assassin. Some of you might know him from the TV in a past life. Um, so yeah, we're thrilled to have Drew along. It's been a while since feels a while since we've done a podcast or an episode, Todd. But how are you?
Hot, hot and hot. Yeah, Drew being a native Texan, I'm sure he appreciates being away from Texas in the summer, but probably hates being in Wisconsin in the winter. But my gosh, it's ridiculously hot. Like I'm done. I'm just over it. It's. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie by Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing, but part of that movie, the whole theme is like how much the heat makes people irritable. Like I feel that. Like I was today just like grumpy just because it's hot, just period. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it hasn't been a bad week in the UK in terms of the heat you guys have in the US. It's nothing, but for us, it's yeah. Well, I think I mentioned it last time. It's been hot, but it's not too bad this week. Drew, how are you? It's a pleasure to have you on, and thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing great. Not so hot here. I do live in Wisconsin, so it rarely gets even in the 90s. But it's the winters that suck. Yeah, we have days where the daytime high temperature is below zero, and that's Fahrenheit, of course. But the way the math works, once you get below zero Fahrenheit and Celsius, that's actually kind of start to line up a bit. But yeah, we have days where the daytime high will be like 5 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. The overnight low will be like 35 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. And it's really honestly dangerous to be outside when it's that cold because you can get frostbite in like 5 minutes. So it sucks.
You, you see with your background as being a TV weatherman, do you
Mhm.
inadvertently find yourself talking about the weather, but in a TV weatherman style?
I guess so. I mean, I've always had an affection for weather. I grew up in West Texas, and so it's called Tornado Alley, and there were always tornado threats. I've never seen a tornado. I really want to see a tornado, but yeah, it's like I work in an office environment now. I actually work for a facility that gives continuing education credit for mental health. I'm the office meteorologist, I guess. So people are always coming to me and they're asking like, we've had hazy conditions the last couple of days because of some fires in Manitoba, Canada. The winds are out of the northwest, so we've got this haze, and it makes for a beautiful sunrise and sunset. But people have been like, "Why is it hazy?" And then I show them, on a satellite image. I'm like, "Well, there's fires in Manitoba, and that smoke is coming down into our area." And then also, if we're going to have like severe weather that day, everyone swings by my office to get a forecast, which I absolutely love. I still love the weather. I used to do television weather, but I still do office weather, I guess.
Cool, cool.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, growing up in North Alabama, I learned a lot of phrases, and so now I have a radar app on my phone that shows me storm relative velocity because I
mhm.
know that that's the important thing to look at for tornadoes. And living in the southeast, you have to know that. But yeah,
Mm.
not Look many
So,
people
so,
say
so,
overnight
so,
greens.
so,
Lows in daily conversation like you just did.
yeah.
Overnight low just rolled over off the tongue, like My wife, will be at the grocery store or something, and somebody will stop me, and they'll recognize me, and then they'll just casually mention the weather, and then I'll go on this like 5 minute and then like later she'll be like, they didn't want to know that much about the weather, right? Like they just wanted a quick to say hi, and then you went on this crazy long rant about the weather. So Well, I mean, it's the meteorologist's fault that it's this hot, right? I mean, it's basically the weathermen exactly. should be able to control I the always weather. tell
Yeah.
people that there's a computer at the Pentagon that controls the weather and the stock market. I've had some funny
oh,
looks when I say that one. Yeah.
man.
Sounds like a
Cool,
segment on
cool.
Fox News.
Mhm. But yeah, no, thanks for joining us, Drew. I'll
Yeah.
just I'll give you a little overview of sort of what we're going to go through. So Todd's got a little announcement to make about a giveaway from the Razor Company, which I'll hand over to Todd in a minute. So yeah, thank you to the guys at the Razor Company for that. Then we'll talk to Drew. We'll talk about his background and I suppose his mental health journey. And then we'll move on to sort of work and mental health, because I know Drew has some experience of that. I certainly have some experience of that. I do want to do a full episode on that, to be honest. But yeah, it's something we could talk about. And then Todd, Professor Todd, has got a quiz for me and Drew to test our grey matter against. So it'd be interesting to see how we get on with that. So yeah, Todd, over to you. If you want to talk about the giveaway, it's now or never.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just really exciting developments between episode 3 and 4 for us. Just people reaching out and me contacting different people. But I had a chance to have a conversation with Jason at the razor company, and he had asked me. I did I guess an Instagram live and a YouTube live, I think after episode 2, talking about our episode, and he popped in on the live, said, "Hey, what can I do to support you guys?" And so he and I had a phone conversation this weekend. He really has a heart for mental health. He particularly mentioned, watching his dad's generation like go through, sort of suffering in silence, not being able to talk about emotions. And he just also talked about, men our age, middle-aged guys, and what we're going through in this day and time, and the stress of the pandemic. And anyway, he really wants to support what we do. So what he's committed to do is for the remaining episodes, for the year 2021, he's going to donate a $20 gift certificate per episode, up to 4 episodes per month. So hopefully we'll get one of these days, we'll get to 4, but right now we're shooting for two a month. So yeah, so each episode we'll have a $20 razor company gift certificate to give away. And if you know anything about the razor company, I think anything over $10 ships free. Like, it's the free shipping's like unbelievable. And he said, I like to do gift certificates as opposed to product, because sometimes people already have the product you're giving away or whatever, and it's nice for them to be able to have the choice. So we're super thankful for Jason for coming alongside. And I can't really divulge much, but he's got a special announcement coming up very, very soon. It's going to be related to mental health as well. So I think we're actually going to have a guest in a future episode on to talk about that. So it's really exciting. But yeah, just, Jason was amazing to talk to. And, I know, Andy, you and I both had conversations with Johnny. You actually met him and talked with him from Lothar, and I guess that's how it's pronounced, Lothar. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I just chatted with him on Instagram. But anyway, when I found out he was about, and we're going to talk about him much and more in the future, but when I found out his heart, if you will, for mental health and what he's trying to do with his company, I instantly went and bought all 4 soaps, because I read his description of what he's trying to do as a company. And I'm just like, that's what I'm all about. And so, and I got a chance to use 2 of them this week. And I know you did an Instagram live, and maybe you've done another one, but his soaps are blowing me away. So I can't wait to talk about those in the future too. But yeah, if you haven't checked out Lothar yet, check that stuff out. It's great. And I plan to probably use it in an upcoming, shave pretty soon, because Drew also sent me a slant razor, which I've never used a slant before. This is the Razor Rock German 37. I think that's right. Yep. So I've got to ask Drew later how to use it. It looks pretty menacing. Have you ever used a slant before, Andy?
I haven't. I've heard they are pretty good, especially if you've got sensitive skin. One of my buddies, Chris, who is Shave King on Instagram, he swears by it, and he doesn't use anything else other than a slant. So yeah, they are supposed to be pretty good. And I know the Razor Rock is one of the best ones. So
one of the good ones. Yeah. And just
a quick 3. I have.
You got 3 slants?
Yeah, I have a PAA El Fantasma. I have a Fatip Piccolo Lo Sorto, and then I have the German 33, and that's my favorite one of the 3. And it's actually the least aggressive slant. I'd say the El Fantasma is probably the most. I mean, that thing is almost scary to look at, because it twists the blade so much. And maybe it's all in my head, but I just think I get a really good shave from all 3 of those razors. I don't know.
I'm excited to try it out.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to just butt in really quickly, and this is it's a really strange thing I've got to do. I've got to put my phone on charge, I'm going to ruin the magic maybe of my my background, but I've got to put my phone on charge, otherwise everything will go Pete Tong. So bear with me. But you've got stuff to talk about anyway, Todd, haven't you, with the giveaway? So I'll be back in literally 30 seconds.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what we're going to do for the giveaway is a couple things you need to listen to. So we're going to just like we did with just like we did with Garrett, we're going to ask Drew in about midway through the podcast episode about his a couple of soaps that might get his head in the right headspace, one that kind of pulls him out of a funk or what have you, or sort of his mental health soap, if you will. And so you need to listen for those answers to that.
See,
oh no, technical difficulties all over.
Right, I'm sure Drew's got experience of things going wrong with live TV, and this is just my experience of live podcasting going horribly wrong.
Yeah.
yeah. You're not, Drew. You're not on a blooper reel somewhere, are you? Like on YouTube? Are you?
There's a couple. No. Yeah, there's a couple of times that I maybe like said something or kind of tripped. I fell once on like just off camera, and you heard me crash, and then the anchor kind of was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Yeah, I'm very clumsy. So.
That's funny.
I didn't notice when you got it banded. You did have pants on, correct? I didn't get. I go, guys. You get up and it's completely naked from the waist.
Yeah. The whole Zoom culture. Yeah, no, I'm very cautious for that. But yeah, we're not normally this unprepared, or I'm certainly not. But it's been a bit of a crazy day. So yeah, apologies everyone, and apologies to you guys.
No. Yeah. So listen for Drew's favorite soaps there, mental health soaps, and then at the end, I'll designate one of the trivia questions that you'll need to know. And so what you can do is, and I'll repeat this at the end. You'll email me your answers to Todd at takecareman.com. So TODD at takecareman.com. We'll put all that in the show notes. And if you will, just email me the answers to those two questions, which we'll repeat at the end. And also just go ahead and put your mailing address in there as well. That way it just saves a step. So I can. Well, actually, I think all I need is an email because it'll be an electronic gift certificate that you can put in. So excited about that. And just two quick shout outs before we get into Drew, sharing a little bit about his history mental health wise. One, to Drew, he's read for us an audio disclaimer, which we may or may not have at the beginning of this episode, but we hope to have it in future episodes. And he's also going to do a video version for us. And we've talked a little about that disclaimer kind of thing that, yes, I'm have a PhD in social work, but I'm not your therapist. And neither is Andy or any guest that we have on.
I'm just the court jester that
and we just want to, when guests come on with professional backgrounds, we want them to also just feel like that they're not putting themselves at any kind of legal risk. So we'll have those disclaimers coming out pretty soon. And then also Justin McIntyre, did I get his last name right? I think that's right. Anyway, J Mac from the Red Island Shaver composed some intro music for our podcast. So just shout out to Drew appreciate you doing that, and also to J Mac for doing that. So yeah, really excited. Lots of developments and lots of collaboration. Andy, one thing that occurs to me is like when you start these podcasts, like it felt like me and you, and now I feel like we have this team that's kind of supporting us and starting to cheer on what we do, and that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thing to have happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, appreciate that. Obviously, Drew and the guys who are supporting us. It does mean a lot, and it helps us to, I guess, achieve more than we would otherwise. I think we've also spoken about starting up a Patreon, which I think we need to start doing. And again, there's no pressure on anybody to donate to that, but it allows us to do more with, I suppose, the platform of the podcast. So yeah, no, thanks to everybody that's obviously supported us over the last 4 episodes. So no, thanks for that, Todd. Obviously, Drew, on to you. As I said in the intro, some people may know you from the television. Some people may know you as the Whisker Assassin, but do you want to give everybody a little bit of an overview about you and I suppose your background
mental
and your
journey?
Mental health journey, yeah.
So I grew up in Texas, and then I got into television news in college. There was actually a fire in my apartment complex, and I grabbed my video camera. I was studying broadcasting at the time, and I got some good video of it, and they offered me a job. And I'll get to how that was a stressful job, and working in TV news is stressful. But going back even before that, I guess I was always a really happy kid, and had a great childhood growing up, very supportive parents. They're both still around, and I talk to them every day. But I did struggle some as a kid. I started to put on weight about the time I got to middle school. So about 10 or 11 years old, and, was bullied a little bit, just kind of like any kid is. And I still to this day do struggle with my weight. And that, I think, that has been probably the hardest thing for me to ever deal with. Like at such a young age, even to now in my mid adulthood, it's still something that I struggle with. So that has always kind of, a cloud that's hung over my head. Also, when I was in the 8th grade, my grandfather was killed in a car wreck. Basically, he ran a stop sign, but the guy that hit him was going like 100 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. So he misjudged the speed of the car that hit him. And it was really about then that I went to my first therapist. And it was this geezer that my mom had actually gone to when she was younger and whatnot. But the dude was really cool. His name is Dr. Wall. And this is when I lived in West Texas. And what I liked about the guy, and Todd and I kind of talked about this, he was the first adult that also talked to me like I was an adult. I was like 13. I was in the 8th grade. And we talked about how, he understood that my parents were loving and supporting, but they could be a little bit, demanding maybe. My dad's a perfectionist. He honestly is. And he had to admit that. And that therapist had to kind of make my dad admit, like, okay, you're a perfectionist, but Drew may not be. So you need to lighten up a little bit. And what I liked about this therapist, and I'll keep it G-rated for this podcast, but he cursed a lot. And he was kind of the first adult that I had ever been around that, I'd heard adults curse when they were telling jokes and stuff, but I never had an adult curse to me. And not like, he wasn't cursing at me. He just conversationally used profanity. And to me, I was like, this guy is different. This guy's a little bit different than the other adults that I've talked. And he's the first adult that treated me like an adult, I would say. So that was cool. And he kind of told me, he's like, don't sweat the small stuff. Your grandfather was killed. Well, he ultimately told my parents, he's like, Drew's a good kid. He doesn't have any major mental issues, but he needed a check-in. Essentially, he needed to talk to somebody. So that was good. Dr. Wall, we had a few sessions and I kind of went on. Then I got through high school. High school was fine, whatever. Got to college and I went back to see Dr. Wall. The stress of college. I mean, you guys have, Andy, I'm sure you've probably been to college. I know Todd has way too much college. It just was a lot to take in. And it's just,
I'm not that clever. I'm not that clever, Drew.
Gotcha.
I haven't been to college or university. No.
Right. It was stressful. And I went back and Dr. Wall kind of helped another checkup with him and kind of got things straight again. And he helped me with a few things. And then, I never saw him again after that. I don't even know if he's still around. Cause like I said, I jokingly said he was a geezer, super nice guy. But, so then everything kind of goes fine. So then I start working in TV news. Like I said, I start working in TV news. Very stressful, but I enjoyed it. I was a TV camera guy. And every day was something different. My very first day working in news, there was a plane crash and it killed a father and his daughter and their dog. And I remember standing next to that plane and it was next to, I was 100 yards away, but still in a field. It was very surreal. And I worked in TV news as a photographer for about 10 years or so. And I saw some pretty horrific things, lots of trauma there. I lived in Little Rock, Arkansas for a while, and there's a lot of crime in Little Rock. It's mostly gang related. It's mostly drug related, but I went to many, many homicides, and I was there before they had a chance to secure the scene and whatnot. So I saw a lot of dead bodies in it, and I went to a lot of bad car wrecks and stuff, and that weighed on me. My father's a retired firefighter, so he saw some pretty awful things too. And I remember calling him one night after a particularly awful car wreck that I had gone to. And it was like 3:00 in the morning. And I said, Dad, I just needed to talk to somebody. And he goes, I totally understand. He's like, I saw some pretty awful things too in my years firefighting. And he goes, I'm glad you called me. I'm glad you want to talk about this. He goes, because I would hate to think of you going back home to your apartment by yourself after seeing that and not having somebody to talk, just to get it off your chest and, and somebody to empathize with me. And so he did. And, but ultimately that career made me kind of cynical. It affected a relationship that I had. I just was an angry person. And a lot of it was because it was a fun job. Don't get me wrong. I got to do some cool things. I got to meet Willie Nelson. I got to hang out with Willie Nelson. I got to do a lot of cool things with that job, but a lot of it was covering really bad news. And that weighed on me. Then I became a television meteorologist. I left all that behind. I went to 2 hurricanes and that was very cool. And then that kind of spurred my desire to become a television meteorologist. I moved up to Wisconsin and I did TV meteorology for 6 years. And that gave me a very thick skin because I got a lot of emails from people that hated the weather and hated my way of presenting it and whatnot, whatever. I just let all that roll off or whatever. Was going really good. Everything, like, mentally I was doing really well and everything seemed great. But then still struggling with the weight or whatever. But I've managed. It's never been too bad. But then what really changed for me was a little over 3 years ago, the birth of our first daughter. I have two daughters. One is a little over 3 and one is about 11 months. And about 3 months or so after our first daughter was born, I got very depressed, more so than I've ever been in my entire life. You've always heard of the baby blues. You've heard mostly moms get that and whatnot. And it's just a postpartum. They don't really know. They don't know a lot about it, but it's essentially depression that develops after a child is born. Well, fathers can get it as well. There's a lot of hormones, especially with the female going on, but with the father as well. And I went into the deepest depression I've ever gone in my life. And when I went to work, I was on television, not a ton of people. I'm in Western Wisconsin. It's not a huge audience, but I would put a mask on and I would be the nice guy and I would deliver the weather and I would smile and I would joke and whatnot, but I was dying inside. And I went to see a couple of therapists about it and I didn't get a whole lot of help, really. I don't know, maybe. And I tried as best as I could to open up to them. And that's key. When you do see a therapist, you have to be completely honest. You can't hold anything back. And I think, honestly, at least for me, the hardest subject to bring up was suicide. I don't consider myself ever a serious candidate, if you will, for suicide, but it's crossed my mind. And I mentioned that to my therapist. Over the years, I've gone to about 4 different, had a great one in Arkansas. I forgot about her. Her name was Vicki Tanner. And I went to her for on and off for a few years. And I would do check-ins with her. I was having kind of relationship issues in my job and whatnot. And she helped me out a lot. She's the best therapist that I've had. But when I moved to Arkansas and I got that really bad depression, I was very lost. Fortunately, I just kind of came out of it. But it was tough, like there were some very dark days there. And it made me feel so bad that I had this daughter, and these were supposed to be like the happiest times. She's learning to walk and she's learning to crawl and learning to talk. And I was just absolutely, I just cried and I don't know why I felt that way. But around the age of 1, I kind of got over it. I just kind of, I put on a lot of weight during that period as well. It was just rough. And my wife, who is super supportive, I feel bad that she had to watch it all. And she was walking on eggshells, she didn't want to make me mad or she didn't want to make me feel worse. Like I really commend her for keeping her mental sanity during those dark days for me. 'Cause she kind of had to take care of me because I didn't want to get out of bed sometimes, like I said, around 1 year or shortly thereafter, I just kind of came out. It's like a fog just lifted. I don't really know what it was that caused it to go away. It concerned me when our second daughter was born. I thought that I would end up back in that state. I did not. I don't know what's different. Maybe a lot of it is I kind of knew what to expect, a little bit more. But I would say the last year, I've been probably the happiest I've ever been in my life. And that's crazy to think that it's during a pandemic. It's during a time when a lot of people are really, really struggling. I remember going to the grocery store like a month into the pandemic, and I saw this poor gentleman, and he'd completely covered his entire body. He had gloves on, and he had a hoodie zipped up so much so that only one eye was exposed. And he was wearing glasses. And I could see his eye and I could see his glasses. And I felt so bad for the guy because I'm like, he probably was a germaphobe or something like that. And I'm like, this is killing him to have to come out in public for this invisible threat, and just, I felt so bad for that guy, but I empathized with, I know exactly where he was coming from. I'll never forget that guy, even though all I saw was his eye. And it's like, I hope he sought therapy. I hope he went to talk to somebody about it because I don't want to say that's not normal, but for some people it's come to that, and I've been there, maybe not in that exact situation, but I've at least felt that way. And I've had an invisible, that same about me, so yeah, I don't know. So now I work for a company. It's, my job is way less stressful. It's not, It doesn't deal with the weather. It doesn't deal with any crime. It actually is a company that provides continuing education for mostly therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and whatnot. I've developed relationships with all of these key experts across the country and even the world. And they, and I kind of have little mini sessions with them. I host webcasts with them because of the pandemic. We're pretty much all online, and I host their webcasts. So before we get started, I check in with them. And I think that's what's key for anybody out there. If you do feel even the slightest bit of depression, or you may not know what depression feels like, but something feels off and something doesn't feel right, instead of letting it get to something much bigger, go have a quick check-in with a therapist. And it's tough because of insurance and whatnot. Most therapists will work with you. I think that was a big thing for me. I couldn't afford therapy. I know there's group sessions, and a lot of times those are even free. They're, a lot like an AA meeting or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, for me, I think the key is, before it snowballs and gets out of control, do a quick check-in with a therapist or with some sort of mental health professional, and see if there's something bigger there that needs to be addressed. I'm sorry I talked for so long. That's I can just go on and on forever, but
that was all great. Yeah, no. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of things sort of stand out to me there as you're talking about it. Is transitions in life, like whether it be starting school or starting a different job, or having a job that's sort of high pressure, particularly like I imagine being a TV weatherman is a little bit about being a soccer, or as Andy calls it, football goalie.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of down in times, but then there's a short period of time where you got to be on, very solid. But yeah, I wonder for a lot of people, particularly because there is postpartum for dads too. There's a thing that exists there, and I've not looked too much in the research of it, but I certainly think for some parents, I know it was true for me, sleep deprivation played a role in the first year of my daughter's
Absolutely.
life. She didn't, for me, because she didn't sleep well. And so when she didn't sleep well, my wife and I didn't sleep well. So that was, a challenge there. And it certainly can play into it. Well, just sort of briefly, and you mentioned when you were in college, you sort of went for the second time because you'd already gone when your grandfather passed. But so what sort of made you decide in college to get help or seek help?
So it's interesting. It was two things. I'd living in an apartment because I was broke, living in an apartment with two other guys, and it was a tiny apartment, and I was cramped, and I didn't have a whole lot of privacy. It's like we had a guy sleeping on the couch, and then I had my room, and then my roommate had his room. So it's like three dudes in this tiny apartment, and like it was that. I don't know, I think that wasn't, maybe that's what like finally was the straw that broke the camel's back, because I was just not. I didn't enjoy like my living situation. But one of the strange things, so like I said, the thing that I think first started affecting me was weight gain and being overweight. When I was in college, I lost a ton of weight. I've done that my whole life. Actually, I've gained a lot and I've lost a lot. And I've been as low as like basically 250 pounds. I've been as high as 403 pounds. And I typically just go back and forth, which isn't healthy. That's not good at all for your body, but that's kind of what I've done. And once in college, I lost a ton of weight. I got very active. I was playing a lot of racquetball at the rec center and whatnot. Well, then that made me feel like not myself anymore. I had spent like 10, 15 years as this overweight person, now starting to lose a lot of weight. It gave me a lot more confidence. And then I felt like I wasn't even myself. And that's the best thing I can explain. I didn't feel like myself anymore. And I was also, and this is kind of the same reason I went to a therapist when I lived in Arkansas much later, because that was another period that I lost a lot of weight. I was starting to get a lot more attention from the fairer sex. I would start to go to bars and whatnot, and these like ladies, these attractive women would talk to me and whatnot, which they wouldn't give me the time of day when I was overweight. Maybe they would have actually, but I didn't allow it. I had such a negative image of myself. I wouldn't even approach these women or anything like that. But now that I was starting to look better because I was, had lost weight, they were coming to me sometimes and talking to me, and that was too much for me to handle. and I didn't, again, I felt like I was doing something wrong, or I felt like I didn't like how that felt. It was odd. I can't really explain it. And then later I ended up gaining all the weight back, essentially, because I think maybe I felt more comfortable overweight.
I think what's true is that positive changes can feel scary, because we don't know what life's like in that new role or that new way we've not been before. So if it's as a new dad, or, as someone who is now healthier and lost weight, that kind of thing, and you feel like, and so, for a lot of people, and I struggle with my weight as well, and have done the same yo-yo kind of thing. And I think for a lot of us that have, had problems with weight, not necessarily consciously, but subconsciously, it's almost a safety barrier to the rest of the world. Like it's, in an odd kind of way. And yeah, that's a whole episode we could do, as well as the whole issue of, sort of physical health and mental health, but also, I tend to be a stress eater. I tend to overeat, particularly like at night when I get super stressed about something or whatever. And that's been the same thing, sort of yo-yoed for me. And I was my healthiest around that age of, say, 2021 I was up running every morning. I mean, seems like another me when I look back on it. But I did want to touch real quick on what you said. And then I know we want to get into talking a little bit about the workplace and stress and mental health. But, and this is related to that, because this is something that all three of us have experienced. And that's sort of what's called secondary or vicarious trauma, meaning you're experiencing the trauma of others who are experiencing it more heavily than you are. In other words, the people who lose their lives in car crashes, or the kids that I saw who were abused, or Andy and his experiences in the military. Like you're not the person directly affected by that, but you're still hugely affected by it. And I think people sometimes will brush that off and say, well, you know the job you do, you know what you're getting yourself into. That's kind of what you should be expecting. But the thing is people don't realize what that does to you, particularly as it takes a cumulative toll. And, something that stood out to me that you said, Drew, that's been common in Andy's story and my story and so many men's stories, is that depression will often manifest itself in irritability. Like we're real, quick to fly off the handle or whatever. And normally we'd be these, mild mannered guys or whatever, and not angry. And for so many men, I think they're just looking for that sort of blue feeling or whatever, and not really understanding that oftentimes anger is the sort of primary indicator that someone might be super depressed, because they're repressing all that anger. So I think that's a common theme that I think we heard from Garrett when he was on, that I think we'll continue to hear from guests, is anger and its relationship to depression, and particularly depression within men.
Yeah, I actually hosted a webcast the other day, and it was on anger management and talking about how fear and anger, that you as a therapist know about the flight, freeze, or fight. And it's like a lot of times anger is brought on by fear. And so a person, is triggered in a way, like something that maybe not even angers them. It actually makes them afraid first. And then obviously they're going to probably go to one of those avenues, either fear or fight, freeze, or fight. And so it's like, just, I guess, kind of depending on how your deep down personality is whether you're going to become aggressive or you're going to tune out, because that would be like fleeing. And then I guess tuning out also would be like freezing. I mean, I think it's not so much that you're agitated by something, it's you're afraid of something. And that something that you fear doesn't have to actually be somebody, pulling a weapon out on you or something. That fear can come just from money. That fear can come from, being a father or whatever, right, or just being in a situation that you're not used to.
Yeah. Like, starting a new job, like, Andy has just done. And, I think it's important to realize that this is sort of my view and other people's view, but it's not a universal view. And it's something that's hard for some people to understand, but I think there's such thing as a negative expression of certain emotions, but I don't think there's such thing as a negative emotion. In other words, my favorite definition for anger is frustration over unmet expectations. And the problem is when we don't find a healthy way to express that day in, day out, and we kind of repress it, and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up, and we don't have a regular outlet for it. Likewise, grief is honoring a precious loss, or as the wonderful Marvel series WandaVision expressed, the line from Vision in that series, that, what is grief if not love persevering? Like grief and anger tells me that you have values and you have something you appreciate, and you don't like seeing people cross certain boundaries and that kind of thing. But anger is an appropriate, healthy thing. And I think for me as a kid, I was brought up to think that anger was bad, like that all anger was bad. And I remember, first time I went to, or not first time, but while I was in like Sunday school class or Bible class, call it different things in different parts of the country and the world. But I remember when they were telling us the story of like Jesus losing his mind in the temple and start throwing stuff around, and he was angry, and it didn't fit with this whole picture that I'd been given by adults, was like, you should never be angry, which is some of the most damaging way to look at it. So there's nothing wrong with being angry. What's bad is to stuff it, not express it in healthy ways. And I think that's why it often comes out in men, is because we've part of the culture we live in, we've kind of been emasculated in a lot of ways. And so sometimes we hide our anger because we don't want to appear to be the aggressors in certain settings or whatever. And it's a whole thing to unpack there. But I think it's just, important to recognize that anger itself is not bad. It's just that when it comes out at times when you don't expect it, when it pops up at little things, like for me, I can do something like drop a carton of eggs right in the kitchen. And that's like the dam that breaks and then that's when I like all the anger comes out or whatever, or all the sadness or whatever. And I realize I've just been, holding it in or whatever. And so yeah, I just think it's important to note that there's no such thing as a negative emotion, but there is sort of the negative expression of emotions.
Yeah.
No, that's a good, it's a good overview of obviously where you've been, where you've come from, and obviously how you've sort of come to be where you are today. Is there anything, just quickly, because obviously we're all, I suppose, we've all got a similar hobby in the whole traditional wet shaving, and we'll touch on that in a second. Is there anything, advice you could give to anybody listening to this or watching this about obviously how to cope, or if they feel like they're at a point where they can't cope, what you could suggest, and don't feel like this, and anybody, and we mentioned it, don't feel like what Drew is telling you is what you have to do.
Right.
Obviously,
just what helped me, and maybe what helped me could help somebody else. I would say just connect with somebody. I feel like, and that's hard because obviously the pandemic is still very much a real thing. But just find somebody to connect with, even if it's, virtually. I know, like I mentioned, suicide or whatever. I lived in Arkansas. After I left Texas, I lived in Little Rock for several years, and then I moved up here to Wisconsin. I always had a plan, and I still am very close to my parents. I talk to them all the time, and I'm an only child. That's probably why I'm very close to them. But I always thought to myself, if it ever got so bad that I literally thought I was going to end my life, I don't care what I was in the middle of. Even if I was in the middle of work and I had to walk away from the job, I would get in my vehicle. I would drive to Texas. It was a 6-hour drive because they live in the Dallas area now. And I would have driven there no matter what time it was, and then knocked on their door and said, I'm here. I need some help. Have somebody that you can call in the middle of the night if it gets bad. Have somebody that just understands your situation and can be there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to have some sort of, like to know, like if you were to get in that spot, and sometimes it sneaks up on people. And, for me, I expressed in the first episodes, going through periods of feeling suicidal and things like that. And there's been times in my household so I grew up in the South around guns, hunting. I own guns. There's been multiple times in the past in my life where I've gotten all the guns out of my house. Like I've taken them to a relative and said, hold on to my firearms for me right now. I just don't feel comfortable having them in the house. I don't, just knowing what those areas might be that would be a risk if you were feeling that way, and trying to remove as much lethality as you can from your day-to-day life. Right.
And the fact that you even know that is a potential threat is big.
Yeah.
Because just knowing that is, a potential for you shows that you're actually pretty mentally aware.
Yeah.
You actually, because there are people that, the thought of ever like, I should maybe get rid of my guns, they go to their gun.
Yeah. Right.
And the fact that it's kind of like with me. I mean, while I was very depressed with the birth of my first daughter, I knew it. It wasn't like I was oblivious to the fact. I knew I was in this bad situation, and I got up every day and I did go to work and I did what I could. I did know I was in that situation. And if you're ever to the point where you know that you need to do something to make your environment safer because you feel you might harm yourself, is actually a good thing. Because you're aware that there is a problem there. So yeah, that's, like I said, that's big.
Yeah, it was cool. I did that one time with my mom. Like I took all of my my parents are divorced and both remarried, but I took my particularly one particular firearm to my mom, and she didn't even ask any questions. She knew, like we had that understanding. She just knew, like, and it was so cool because it was such a judgment free kind of thing. She's like, I totally get it. Like no kind of like she didn't preach to me or like try to say, oh, or what, she just like got it. And so, yeah, that's important, I think, for people to realize. And there's actually some, and listen, I'm not a anti-gun guy by I'm a concealed carry permit holder. Like but there is some strong correlations between depression and gun owners and the lethality of suicide attempts, if you will. And so it's just something to be smart about. And certainly something we need to dedicate, several upcoming episodes to. Well, related to that question that Andy asked you, I'm wondering, because you've got the privilege of sitting and hearing all of these great sort of mental health experts deliver conferences for people working on continuing education, credits and stuff. Is there one thing that jumps out at you that you've gleaned in your time that really has stuck with you, or that kind of like has been like this nugget that you found in any of the stuff that you have heard?
Gosh,
I'm springing this on you, so you may have.
Yeah, no, I've hosted hundreds. Like I actually have a notebook full of every one that I've hosted because I have time codes that I write down because I edit the video and whatnot. I don't know if there's like one in particular, but it all does fascinate me because I just learn so much. I do know there's a couple of speakers that talk about trauma. They talk about PTSD and whatnot. And I think the biggest for me is like forgiveness of yourself. One of my speakers, she deals with a lot of veterans and she deals with a lot of rape victims. They obviously have experienced some pretty hardcore PTSD. And she emphasizes, like, say she's got a rape victim that she's one of her clients, and she'll say, and I can relate to this, and I'll get to this in a second. It's not as extreme, but so this is hypothetical. She has a client that went out one night. She wore a red dress and she got raped, and she said, and she'd be like, the victim is like, I shouldn't have gone out that night. I shouldn't have worn that dress. I shouldn't have had one more drink because it made me vulnerable and whatnot. And my speaker always says, when you went out that night, did you know you were going to be raped? And she's like, well, no, I didn't know. Then you should have gone out. Like, how many hundreds of nights did you go out and that didn't happen? And it happened one time and you didn't cause it. Yep. And so don't beat yourself up over it. It happened. You didn't do it. The person that did it to you, the person that raped you, is the one that did it. And they're the guilty person. They're the one that needs to be held responsible. You did not do it. You did not want it. You didn't provoke them. Whatever. Right. Even if she did kind of flirt with a guy and then later that doesn't merit flirting with somebody, doesn't give them the right to rape you. And she always emphasizes 100% of all rapes are the rapist that is at fault, not the person that got raped. And she goes, that's like an epiphany for all of my clients. They, they're kind of like, yeah, you're right. And that can be applied to a million other things. So about a month ago, I dislocated my shoulder and I've still got shoulder issues. I have to go see another physical therapist and it's an issue. When I set up my daughter's slip and slide in our front yard and I went for that, if I did not know that I was going to dislocate my shoulder and I was going to do damage to my shoulder, and it may be permanent, I don't know, but I still did it. And I don't regret doing it. It's like because I could have done it and nothing would have happened. And I've probably cheated a trauma like that, physical trauma, a million times. I do all kinds of crazy stuff. We should still do those things. And sometimes bad things happen, but don't blame yourself over it, you know? And same thing for veterans, you know, like I said, that same therapist deals with a lot of veterans, and they carry this guilt of having to kill or be killed in many situations, you know? And it's like, I can't even imagine what it's like to take somebody else's life in warfare. But she's like, you didn't start this war, you know, even if you signed up for the military, you know, drafting is one thing. A lot of people, I really feel bad for people that were drafted, especially like the Vietnam War. They didn't want to be there in many cases and ended up in those situations. But even if you joined voluntarily, like, you know, you didn't start the war. And in many instances it is kill or be killed. And it's like, it just is one of those things. And I'm sure that's very hard for people to deal with, but forgiveness, I think, is the main thing. I forgive myself for doing the slip and slide. So I messed up my arm, and it may affect me for the rest of my life. I don't know, but it's still, I at least can laugh about it. And I think the reason I can laugh about it is because I've forgiven myself. Like, you know, it's just one of those things. Yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah. A common underlying issue and for just, you know, feeling well emotionally in general, but also just underneath mental illness issues is that whole issue of feeling guilt or self-loathing. And I think it's helpful, very briefly, just to distinguish between guilt and shame. And so guilt is, I made a mistake. Shame is I am a mistake. And I have to catch myself all the time saying stuff to myself like, you stupid idiot. Like, you know, like I catch myself just like talking to myself in horrible ways. You know what I mean? And just like beating myself down when I really just, I go, wait a minute. No, you're not stupid. Like you maybe made a bad decision,
right?
Or you know, were impulsive or whatever, but you're not stupid. Like, you know, just like rein it back in a little bit. And so yeah, I think that shame and feeling like that you're broken and unrepairable is a huge obstacle that people have to face, and trying to fight against that message and realizing that no matter what your situation is, things can get better is much of what we have to, you know, stay focused on. So Andy asked the question about, like, you know, sort of what helps you, and part of what we wanted to ask you is if you have a shaving soap or soaps that help get you in the right headspace. So what do you got to share with us?
Well, there is. So before I even get to that, so shaving in general, like another big key that I've taken away that I think that I can apply the most to my life from these webcasts that I host is mindfulness. I had never heard of mindfulness prior to these webcasts. Andy, I don't know how much you've heard of it, but Todd, I know you've heard of it a ton. And it's the act of just like being present and really focusing on your senses and whatnot. And shaving is huge when it comes to mindfulness. I listen to a lot of music sometimes it's a whole gamut of music. It's usually relaxing stuff. Todd knows I listen to like some screamo satanic death metal. Like I love like hardcore death metal, and I love bluegrass and stuff. But when I'm shaving, I listen to pretty mellow stuff. I listen to a lot of like John Prine. I listen to the more kind of mellow, like David Bowie and stuff like that. But anyways, but a lot of times I don't listen to anything. And when I'm shaving, I listen to the brush on the puck, and I listen to you know, even when I'm tightening my blade into my razor, and then obviously the feel of the bristles on your face, and then the senses that you know, just really trying to enhance your senses as much as you can, and becoming kind of meditative when you do that. And you can do that with anything. There's a famous YouTube video about raisins. And this guy spends like 20 minutes eating 2 raisins, and he's very mindful, and he feels the raisin, and he smells the raisin, and he puts it between his fingers, and he listens to it. And then he finally puts it in his mouth, and he rolls it around in his mouth. And it seems stupid, but you're being super mindful of a meaningless thing, and it actually can enhance your life. And so for me, in sense of smell, Todd probably knows this, sense of smell is one of the biggest like triggers of memories, good and bad. I hear my speaker talk about rape victims, and she's like, yeah, the cologne that the rapist was wearing, she's like, if I ever smell that, like it just sends me to the darkest place ever. But we're talking about good sense. And for me, my biggest calming scent is lavender. And then that's, I'm sure, the case with most people. I've got a couple of tubs here. Taylor of Old Bond Street, the lavender. Hopefully it's not glaring too much. There's that. And then also Noble Otter, Firefighter. The second, it's grapefruit. And then second after that is lavender. And I really, of course, like my Taylor of Old Bond Street is empty. I need to get a new one. But oh my God, yeah, it just smells amazing. And I really like Noble Otter because it's a Texas soap company based out of Houston. But lavender is really my calming. And then also I showed you guys this earlier, but I'll show everyone else. I got a sprig of lavender. My mother-in-law was at a lavender field in Wisconsin last weekend, and she brought some home for me. Lavender actually grows really well in Wisconsin. I didn't know that prior to moving here, but you see occasional lavender fields here and there. But lavender is kind of my thing. That's just two of a couple of other lavender scents that I've enjoyed or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of it for me.
Yeah, I would say to people out there, like, if you think you don't like lavender, make sure you've actually smelled lavender. Like, make sure you get a soap where there's sort of a true lavender. And there's also soaps that mix some woody notes with lavender that help sort of mellow out some of the stuff. But lavender's not as floral as people think it is. It has a bit more of an earthy,
woodsy kind of, or spicy,
exactly. Earthy. Yeah. So if nothing else, if you don't really know what real lavender smells like, and there's no lavender around, go on Amazon and pick up like a $5 bottle of lavender essential oil, and then you'll know what lavender smells like. So don't cheat yourself out of a lavender soap if you think you've tried one and don't like it, because it may have been of synthetic, lavender, and you don't really have the true. But it's the research behind lavender is ridiculous. Like, it's an unbelievable amount of research about how effective it is. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. So
yeah.
So we wanted to touch this episode a little bit on work, and I think this is, as Andy has said and I've said, this is going to be an ongoing thing that we talk about. And I think when we have our guest on, we want to definitely touch on how it's related to them, because we've already talked about parenthood, and how that's, and fatherhood, and how that's related to a mental health issue. But this whole issue of work, I know for me, is an ongoing stressor. And Freud long ago identified that, work life was such a huge component of men's and just anybody's mental health. I know that in talking with each of you individually, you've had your own, work related, stress issues. And we talked in the last episode about how there's research to indicate when people don't feel like they have any control over their work, or that their work is too demanding. And in other words, they're being asked to do more with less, and people don't really respect what they're doing, or they try to micromanage what they're doing. I guess we just take a moment for, each one of us to sort of summarize what our biggest struggles have been in the workplace, and maybe how we've tried to address it.
Andy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll start. I think a lot of it is down to attitude and I suppose education, and not really caring enough. And a lot of people will say, well, why should I care? That's not my job to care. But certainly in my experience, there was so much pressure in my last job to deliver and bring the money in, and I get that there is no company without turnover, but at the same time, there's no turnover without employees. And in my last team, there was me and probably at least two others. We were only a small team that was suffering due to the demands and the workload put on us, and it felt a little bit like, well, modern slavery, for the want of a better word, because we were being driven into the ground so much at the expense of the company wanting to make as much money as they could. But it affected me to the point where I was diagnosed with depression. I was seriously stressed, and I'd raised the issues with my management, and I was pointed in the direction of the employee assistance program. But to me, that just feels like an arse covering exercise. It's a tick box exercise, right? Yep. I've pointed him in that direction.
Right.
And yeah, for some people that might work, but it doesn't actually address the issues. And when the catalyst for that issue isn't looked at, then it's never going to change. So for me personally, I think there needs to be more interest taken on individuals and the things that can change, because everything can be changed. You mean that there's solutions, and it wasn't when I'd gone to my management, I'd come up with solutions. I said, look, this is the problem, this is the solution. And yeah, it may have cost a little, well, it may have cost some money, but long term, you would have got more out of me and more out of the team. But it was just, I don't know, it wasn't taken seriously, I don't feel. So I think there needs to be more done on actual meaningful, I suppose, solutions rather than tick boxes. And maybe that's a case of having somebody within the business rather than mental health champions and mental health first aiders, somebody within a business that actually has the power to make changes and that is passionate about employees' mental health. And you're not going to get that in every business, but people need to be educated, really, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see a move away from, I mean, nothing wrong with HR professionals, like human resource professionals. There's people trained in that and whatnot, but you could also make the argument for a mental health professional being in that role, or at least they're being part of the team one of the problems with EAP is it is a cover your ass sort of situation, both in the just saying, okay, we do mental health, but here in the U.S., okay, so there's been legislation which most recently was codified within what a lot of people call Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, that says there has to be parity between coverage for physical health issues and mental health issues. And again, we sort of falsely separate those things. But what a lot of companies have done is, instead of allowing just the regular health insurance to cover mental health as well, they have a two-tiered system. There's the EAP, or Employee Assistance Program, that they'll send you to, and then there's what you can get for your physical health, and usually the mental health one and through EAP is inferior and not as good as what you can get for physical health. And so even though there's supposed to be parity, there's not in many cases. And yeah, I think being able to have input on the way things are done. Garrett, and I want to hear from Drew what his experiences are, but Garrett sent us the statistic after he did the show, talking about work and mental health, that like 70% of people are dissatisfied with their work, and like 50% feel disengaged from the work that they do. And I saw a long time ago, like this Venn diagram, where it's got the intersecting circles of you want to find something that you're good at, that you enjoy, that also pays you a living wage. And I've actually told my daughter, also find something where you can occasionally get outside and occasionally use your hands. Like, if, find something that is satisfying in that way. But, for me, my biggest stress is I found myself being 50 of not getting any interest from other employers. Like, I like where I work, but I'm kind of in a dead end situation. I can't increase my income anymore. I mean, I'm working 2 extra jobs trying to get my income where I really need it to be, with, a daughter about to go into college and stuff. But, nobody's looking to hire, like this 50-year-old, guy. Like, it's just not, and I'm not saying that people should be knocking down my door. I'm just saying I can feel that age is starting to play a role in my ability to get jobs, and it sucks. Like, it's not. It's bad to feel trapped,
Mm-hmm.
And I have been in job situations before where I walked away from a job without having another job because the job was just too much, and I didn't even have another job lined up yet. I wasn't married at the time, so that was a little easier to do. But it's hard. Like, my wife's been wrestling herself with whether to walk away from her job. She's an elementary school teacher, and it's just getting increasingly difficult to do that job. And so, yeah, the job, the workplace can be such a huge, source of stress. And yeah, we want to, dedicate a whole lot more time going forward to that. But Drew, what about you? What workplace and mental health and job and mental health? What's that been for you?
For me, what's always helped, because I've had my fair share of stressful jobs, but it's always the camaraderie of my employees, but then also support from managers and whatnot. I think what always has kept me happy at my job is camaraderie amongst my fellow employees. My very first real job, I worked at an IMAX theater, and I was projectionist at like an usher part of the time, and then a projectionist at like an IMAX, large format film. And me and those guys are still just such good friends. I mean, like I got married, my 5-year wedding anniversary is coming up in September. And those guys from all over the country now, because we've all just kind of gone, they all came and they were there. And these are guys that I worked with at a movie theater, basically in college. And I'm still such good friends with those guys. And it was the camaraderie we built then. And then I go on to work in TV news. And as a news photographer, me and those guys would go out and after we'd all get off at 11 o'clock at night because we work late or whatever, and we'd all go to the bar together, and we would just bond that way. And we would all get the weight of the day off of our chest. We would go and we'd have a beer and we'd gripe about work. And that really helped to just kind of, you'd laugh about it and you realize, okay, it's not that bad. Now that's work, like I said, a lot of the times when I was in my darkest days was stuff outside of work. When I worked at the television station here in Wisconsin, I didn't have quite the camaraderie that I did in previous jobs in previous years. And that was hard for me. A lot of that was because I was older. Like, I mean, at that point I was already in my 30s. A lot of these reporters that started working there were fresh out of college. And then it seemed like there were people that had been there for 25, 30 years that were already 50s and 60s. And I was single at the time. Again, I met my wife, she's from here, and then we have the kids now. And that's kind of the people that I bond with now. Maybe not everybody's like that, but they're the ones that I look forward to at the end of the day, coming home to and hanging out with and whatnot. But just that's what always got me through. I think, whether my stress was work related or whether my stress was work or outside of work related, the camaraderie of having friends to basically vent to sometimes, but I also had managers, and I had my bosses over the years that would check in with me, and just especially when things were bad in not in Arkansas, at the TV station, my not news director, but the general manager of the station, he came to me one day and he goes, "Are you okay?" Like, he goes, "You don't seem like yourself." And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm a little stressed because of the kid or whatever." And then he goes, Okay. He's like, "I'm just checking. I just want to make sure everything's okay." As soon as he left, I was in the studio. As soon as he left, I wrote an email to him, and I didn't send it till I was walking out the door. And it said, "I'm not okay. Like, I'm so glad you came to talk to me." Maybe the timing wasn't right because it was about 3 minutes before the show.
Yeah. Right.
And if I had really opened up to him, I would have broken down in tears and then looked like a mess on air.
Right.
But I told him, I said, "Let's talk," and so he invited me into his office, and he had just lost his son in a car wreck not long before that. So he could empathize with me. And he goes, "Yeah, I've very recently gone through some very dark days. I know exactly where you're coming from." And obviously different situations, but at least he knew that I wasn't okay. And he recognized that. And we had a very long talk. And I mean, he's not a therapist by any means, but he was like, "You need to go see a therapist." And he didn't know that I'm very open about the fact that I've sought therapy in the past. And he was like, and he goes, "I've gone to see a therapist." And I'm like, "I'm glad you have. I will." And I did. And that helped. And just, so that was just a way to connect. Like, and that goes back to what I said earlier. I think the best piece of advice I can have for anybody, no matter what the level of your depression or your sadness or anything is, you have to connect with somebody, even if you've just got one person, and it doesn't, they don't have to be your best friend, but they need to at least be able to listen and hear. And that's what therapists do. They listen. That's what bartenders do too. They, they sit and they listen.
But I would add barbers. I would add barbers to that too. Some barbers are good at that.
There you go. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's like, you just sometimes, and they don't have to have the answers.
No.
My manager at the station didn't have the answers. I've had friends over the years that I've gone to them and I've told them, when I was in college, some of the best advice I got when I was going through some dark days, I had lost all this weight. and the best advice my friend said to me, he said, "It's going to take time." That's all he said. And it's like, it didn't offer any real solutions, but he's right. And when you leave it as vague and as open as it's going to take time, maybe that means a year, maybe that means 10 years, maybe it means a lifetime. You may never completely get out of your rut or whatnot, but you have to get up every day and you have to try, and you have to do what's best for you, and you have to do what's best for the people around you and whatnot.
That's so good. Yeah, it sounds like I know Andy had, as he described their experience where, people weren't supportive on his job in terms of like when he shared with them. And, part of, two things I would say is one, employers out there, and I know Andy wants to, we've talked about this, we want to get somebody on in the show in the future to sort of speak directly about how they would address mental health in the workplace that are experts in that. But, one would be just, be as supportive as you possibly can. But one direct way you can do that is give your employees permission for mental health days to be a thing, meaning where they can call out of work and say, I need a mental health day, or I need a couple of mental health days, and where they don't have to go into any more detail than that, right? Could people abuse that? Sure, whatever. But don't put people in a situation where they got to lie to you and say, well, I think I have the flu, when really like they're depressed out of their mind and they can't get out of bed. Like, make it a thing where it's okay to say, I need some mental health. I need a mental health break. I need some time away. It's too much right now, right? Like, make that a thing. A push in any way you can with whatever power you have to make sure that there's equal coverage between physical health and mental health issues. Don't limit your employees just to a slim amount of EAP providers. Open it up where they can go to multiple providers and find a therapist that works for them. And just also, particularly for men, and I heard a little bit of this of what you were saying, Drew and Andy. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but of not wanting to get emotional at work. Do you know what I mean? Like, not wanting to have the breakdown in front of colleagues. And there's days where I don't want to go into work because I know that if, like I talked about dropping the eggs, I know there's going to be something that's going to set me off where I might be like a mess, like I can just feel it's right there at the edge. And so being able to call out of work and say, hey, I just can't do this today because, X, Y, and Z, I think is a good standard practice to be in place for employees to make that a thing. I would like to see that be something that becomes normalized. Yeah. All right, gents. Well, that's a lot of heavy material. Y'all ready to bow at the mighty trivia quiz I have prepared for you here?
Yeah,
can't wait.
I'm excited. Well, so we'll run through it now. I think I set a bad precedent last week with 21 points. We'll try to move it in different directions, but I felt the need to. So get your pens and papers handy. We'll run through these pretty quickly here. But it is for a total of 21 points. Some of them are multiple part questions, but I just separated them into this one. Okay, number one. What is the favorite food of Eleven or Elle from Stranger Things? On the Netflix series Stranger Things, Eleven or Elle has a favorite food. Number two. What is the name of the Nintendo game series that features a lead character named Link who explores the magical land of Hyrule? Link, who explores Hyrule, is from what Nintendo game series? Number three. What is the name of the tool carried by Doctor Who? What is the name of the tool carried by Doctor Who? Not what he rides around in, but the tool he carries, or she carries, because there's also been female Doctor Who's. All right, number four, and I'll repeat any that you want me to when we get to the end. Number four, what was the name of Ebenezer Scrooge's deceased business partner? What was the name of Ebenezer Scrooge's deceased business partner? Now, I did research here. I tried to find the years that there were movies that when you guys would have been, and music and stuff. So here's number five. What is the name of the band that performed the song Who Let the Dogs Out? It's the name of the band that performed the song Who Let the Dogs Out. Number six is also a musical question. Which Australian-born performing artist had a song titled I Can't Get You Out of My Head? It was released in September of 2001 and reached number one in over 40 countries. Australian-born performing artist, the song was I Can't Get You Out of My Head. Hit number one in over 40 countries. All right, number seven. In The Lord of the Rings, what is the name of the hobbit who is the best friend of Frodo Baggins and travels with him on his journeys? In The Lord of the Rings, what is the name of the hobbit who is the best friend of Frodo Baggins and travels with him on his journeys? Okay, so ready for number eight? So this is, my daughter has informed me this is officially Harry Potter's birthday. So in celebration of that, in the Harry Potter series of books and films, who is the Half-Blood Prince? Who is the Half-Blood Prince? There's a character's name who is the Half-Blood Prince. Who is it? All right, number 9. Actress Joan Cusack voices which Toy Story film franchise character that appears in Toy Story 2, 3, and 4, but not in the original Toy Story. So this character did not appear in Toy Story 1, but is in Toy Story 2, 3, and 4. And actress Joan Cusack voices this character. Who is that character?
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
All right. I'm going to keep things moving along. I have to come back here if we need to. So number 10. In the film Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail, the Black Knight guarding the bridge loses his left arm and says, "'Tis but a scratch." What does he label the loss of his right arm? And when he uses the left arm, he says, "'Tis but a scratch." In regards to losing the right arm, he says something else about it. Okay. Number 11. What do you call the song sung by sailors on merchant sailing vessels? What are the specific genre of song sung by sailors? Okay, number 12. 2-part question, so this will be 12 and 13 actually. Marvel comic book and cinematic universe character James Buchanan Barnes Jr. is better known by which other 2 names? So Marvel comic book and cinematic universe character James Buchanan Barnes Jr. is better known by which other 2 names? That's 12 and 13. So 12 is one name, 13 is the other name. All right. Number 14 and 15, 2-part question. Complete the following line from a song, and I'm looking for 6 words specifically, all right? Here's the line of the song, and you're going to complete it. The song starts, generals gathered in their masses. What's the next 6 words that follow that? Generals gathered in their masses. And number 15 is what band performed that song? So generals gathered in their masses, then what's the next part of that line? And which band performed that song? That's number 14 and number 15. All right, 16 and 17, 2-part question. What's the names of the 2 brothers? So one brother would be 16, one would be 17. What's the name of the 2 brothers that started the rock band AC/DC? All right, we're getting close to the end. Really 2 questions left here, 2-parters. So number 18 and 19 is a 2-parter. Number 18, how does Obi-Wan Kenobi kill General Grievous? How does Obi-Wan Kenobi kill General Grievous? That's number 18. And number 19, what does he immediately say after killing Grievous? All right. Final question, 2-parter, number 20 and 21. Number 20. What is the name of the most popular song by the 1980s band Dexy's Midnight Runners? It became a number 1 song in the US and the UK. Okay. What's the most popular song by the band Dexy's Midnight Runners? And number 21, what are the band members all wearing in the video, in the music video for that song? The band members are all wearing the exact same thing. What are they wearing? So Dexy's Midnight Runners, what's their most popular song and what did they wear in the music video? All right. Any that you want me to repeat?
All of them. I was doing so well up until question 7, and then it's all just gone to pot.
You need me to repeat?
I don't think so.
Okay. I heard a lot of
Yeah.
sighing when I was reading the
Yeah.
questions. I heard a lot of air blowing. Sorry, I tried to mix it up here, make it easy. All right, so I hope you're playing along at home. So number one, I'll go first with Drew, since he's our guest. What did you have down for number one? The favorite food of 11?
Waffles.
That's correct.
Does it need to be as specific as Eggo, or does she just like waffles?
Eggo's fine for extra points, but yeah, Eggo waffles. Is that what you had, Andy?
It is not. I had a complete guess and said taco rolls.
Okay. So you're going to have to watch Stranger Things. Great show.
Yeah.
Great show. I thought I would hate it, but your kids are probably not. Well, you probably have at least one kid old enough to see Stranger Things.
Yeah, it's a little. I don't know if it's for kids.
It's dark. It's dark.
Good
Yeah,
show.
you have to be teenagers. What I'm saying. Yeah. So number two, what's the name of the Nintendo game series with Link, who explores Hyrule? Andy.
Zelda.
Yes, Legend of Zelda. Drew.
Great. That's what I have. Legend of Zelda. Great game. I love all the Zelda games.
There's a new one out, I think, a brand new one that's out now.
Yeah.
Number three, what's the name of the tool carried by Doctor Who? Andy, what did you have for that one?
Sonic screwdriver.
That's correct. Drew?
I didn't know. I put like a bow staff.
Okay.
I've never watched Doctor Who. I know, like, I was mad when you said not what he travels or she travels in.
Right.
I knew it's a phone booth, but that's all. I've never
TARDIS,
watched Doctor Who. I do watch the Great British Baking Show. That's a British show. Love that show.
I have to get some of those trivia questions in.
There you go.
All right, so 2-2. What was the name of Ebenezer Scrooge's deceased business partner, Drew?
Jacob Marley.
Andy, what'd you have on that?
I had Marley. I didn't know his first name.
That's good. Yeah, that's fine. 3.
No, we'll go Marley then. Yeah.
Not to be. Well, never mind. Number 5. What is the name of the band that performed the song "Who Let the Dogs Out"? Andy.
Baha Men.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Oh wow! All right, 4-4.
That's sad that we know that.
That's great. All right. Number 6. Which Australian-born performing artist had the song "I Can't Get You Out of My Head"? Andy.
I thought this might have been a trick question, but I think it's Kylie Minogue.
That's what I wrote. That's what I wrote.
Wow, guys!
I remember the video and I remember the song.
The video. Let's
yeah.
Now, but wow, I was like,
I didn't know she was Australian. I assumed she was from like Great Britain or from.
I did too. To more
England
recently,
yeah.
That makes 2 of my crushes that are Austrian. My first crush as a kid was Olivia Newton-John, and I had the double LP from Greece, and Kylie Monique.
Have y'all ever seen the show Bluey? It's have y'all ever seen the show Bluey? It's an Australian show. It's like a dog and her family. It's a great show. We love that show.
Check that out. All right, so we're at 5-5. So you guys are doing pretty good. 5 out of 6 here. Number 7 in the Lord of the Rings. What's the name of the Hobbit who's the best friend of Frodo Baggins and travels with him on his journeys? Drew.
I wrote Samwell. Is it Samwell?
That's close. What do you got there?
Now you've said it. I know the answer. Is it Samwise? Samwise Gamgee? Something like that?
Yeah, Samwise Gamgee. So I'm going to give you both a point. Here's why. Okay. Because Drew was close, and Drew's like half sort of answer triggered Andy enough. So I'm giving you both a point. So 6-6. Nice. Samwise Gamgee. Yes. Yeah, that's correct. Samwise Gamgee. Okay, number 8 in the Harry Potter series of books. Who is the Half-Blood Prince, Drew?
I had no. I mean, I wrote Harry Potter.
Okay. All right, Andy.
I've got it in my head that it's a character, and he's like. Well, I don't know the answer, but I can. Okay. I think I can visualize the character. I'm not sure.
Okay, it's Severus Snape.
Oh, no.
Professor Snape.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of a quick trick one because you'd think it would be Harry because he is. But all right, actress Joan Cusack, number 9, voices what Toy Story character?
I know it's wrong. For some reason, I wrote Casey, but that's not right.
Okay, Andy.
Bullseye.
Nope, it's you were close there, Drew. It's Jessie. That's it. Jessie.
Yeah. I say my daughter's a huge fan
cowboy.
of it, and like I watched those like a trillion times. I should have known that. Jessie.
Those movies are way underrated. Great movies. All right, number 10. I thought this one was a fun one. My roommates and I watched this a lot in college. What does the Black Knight say after he loses the second arm, Andy?
It's just a flesh wound.
Just a flesh wound. Drew, what do you got?
I got that. It's
All
just a
right.
flesh wound.
Oh, we're tied up at 7-7, guys. All right.
Well, no, I didn't get number one, so I'm yeah.
Oh, you didn't get number one?
Yeah, no.
Oh, but I thought that there was one that Drew
Oh,
didn't
that I
get.
got that Drew didn't. No,
Yeah, Drew didn't get Sonic Screwdriver, right?
Ah, yeah,
I did,
right.
yeah,
You're right.
So we're tied up 7-7. Okay,
Yeah.
so number 11. What are the songs sung by sailors? Drew.
I wrote a ditty. I don't know.
Okay, Andy.
Sea shanty.
Sea shanty. That is
Okay.
correct. That was close. Diddy is close.
Gotcha.
8-7. Andy
Okay.
takes the lead here. All right. The two-part question: the two names of James Buchanan Barnes Jr. Andy.
No idea. I had a guess at Hawkeye.
Okay.
I guessed
Drew?
Captain America. I didn't know.
So yeah, I'm taking it you two guys are not Marvel guys. Is what I'm.
No,
hearing.
I am.
watch a little bit, but not a ton. Yeah.
Okay.
So James Buchanan Barnes Jr. is better known as Bucky, also known as the Winter Soldier.
That's
Captain American's best friend.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right.
I'll make this simple. I don't have anything for any of the next ones.
Okay. I hope Drew gets this one. He may not. I may be setting him up. All right.
I know this one.
Two-part question. Yeah. Finish that line. Generals gathered in their masses.
Just like witches at black masses.
Just like witches at black masses. And that is a song from what group?
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath. War Pigs.
I was going to say that.
It's War Pigs. Great song. All right. So it is.
I listen to a lot of metal, so Ozzy.
Yeah.
Like
9-8. Andy's. I'm sorry. Drew takes the lead 9-8. All right. What are the name of the two brothers that started the band Black Sabbath? I'm sorry, AC/DC.
AC/DC. Do you know it?
No idea.
You don't know? Okay. It's Angus Young, and then is it Bon Young? Was that his name? He's dead.
Yeah, so you got one of those right.
Angus Young, yeah.
Angus Young, and then Malcolm Young is the other brother. You're thinking about Bon Scott, the singer who
he
died.
replaced. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Loudest concert I've ever been to. I saw AC/DC in Little Rock, and I've seen Metallica a few times, and they're very loud. AC/DC blows them out of the water. Insanely loud concert.
That's crazy. One you need to take earplugs for.
Yes, I do always wear, but yeah.
Honoring Brian Johnson, who's from Newcastle on Tyne. Do people walk around calling it Newcastle on Tyne, or they just say Newcastle? Andy,
Newcastle. Newcastle.
Okay, all right, fine.
Good beer.
Right.
I like Newcastle.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. Number 18 and 19. Obi-Wan kills General Grievous. How?
I guessed lightsaber. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I've seen them all, but I don't remember.
Andy, you got a guess for me?
Well, I was watching the episode the other day, but I must have turned it off before it happened, so I don't know.
No guess for me?
Does he fire it off in a rocket or something?
Okay, so he shoots him with a blaster in the heart. Okay. What does he say immediately after doing that?
My guess was the force was not strong with that one.
Well, that's funny, but no.
Should have been the line.
Smoking.
No, he's disgusted by the fact that he shot him with a blaster instead of killing him with a lightsaber, and he throws it to the side and says, "So uncivilized, so uncivilized." All right, last two here, number 20, number 21. This is a hard one, but anyway, number 20. I'm gonna Andy. So the question was most famous song for Dexy and the Midnight Runners.
Come on, Eileen.
Oh my goodness! Look at that.
Oh,
yeah, and I could tell Drew didn't get. I shouldn't have reacted that way, but Drew didn't get
Saturday Night. That song that goes SADUR.
Yeah,
I thought it was. I thought it was that. So yeah, come on, Eileen. That's them.
All right, so we're heading in. We're heading in 10-9 into the very last question. So at least that gives away the band. But what did the band wear in the music video? All the band members wear in the music video. Drew, you got anything for me?
I didn't get it right because I wrote down silver jumpsuits because I was thinking that it was that same song. But now I know. Isn't it like a black beret with like a red ball on top?
We're going to see what Andy has to say.
I was going to say leather jackets, but
Oh, so it is. The final score is 10-9. Drew takes it by 1 point. The answer is overalls. They all wear overalls in the music video. Yeah, or coveralls.
It's a
What do
really
they call
cheesy
overalls
video.
or coveralls in the UK, Andy? Are they just overalls or
Yeah,
coveralls?
overalls.
Overalls. Okay, that one was fun, guys. That's pretty strong. Y'all did better than you thought you were going to do. I think.
Yeah.
I'm a
I
little.
flagged.
I am tempted to pull your Star Wars and Marvel cards, though. I'm just a little disappointed you didn't get that. I'm just, disappointed, you guys. But that's all right. That's all right.
Must
Nothing
do
wrong with
better.
that.
I'm gonna have to go and watch the movies again.
Some people hate the prequels, so some people just don't watch them multiple times.
Yeah.
But I am a prequelist. I do, in fact, like this. So what we would like for you to do is give us, you can email me at todd@takecareman.com in order to enter the giveaway for the $20 gift certificate for the Razor Company. Email me the name of Drew's 2 soaps he mentioned that he likes to use. He mentioned that about midway through the episode. And then give me the name of the song that was performed by Dexy's Midnight Runners. What's the name of that song? So Todd, Todd, at takecareman.com. We'll put that email in the show notes. That was fun. It was fun. All right. So anything else we need to add there, Andy, before we sign off?
I don't think so. Just a thank you again from me, Drew, for coming on. It makes a difference. Obviously, if we can get real life people on to talk about their experiences, it does help, and hopefully, just hearing people talk about their experiences will help somebody. And like you say, just reach out to somebody if you're struggling. But yeah, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And again, I really appreciate what y'all are doing. Again, just anything that if you make 100 of these episodes and just one of them connects with somebody, then it was worth it.
Thanks.
Exactly.
We appreciate you being a part of it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. Brilliant. Right. Well, take care, guys, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay out of trouble, and we'll talk again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.